Well, are we recording here?
Okay, so now we're here. All right, so we're recording. This is the Stories from the Trenches session. So this is where we just kind of chat. So we promised we would talk about email strategies. So strategy number one, put their name right at the top. So I've read where apparently they've done some neurophysiology experiments, and when you hear your name, your brain just lights up. Apparently saying your name is just Priscilla. It's just magical. Just see, your whole facial expression changed. Mostly it was kind of a deer in the headlights thing. You thought I was calling on you. But still, your name, just immediately your brain starts paying attention. Oh, they said my name, right? So apparently names are important and such. So, but you put their name right at the top, then they think the email is to them personally, even though you sent the identical email to 6,000 other people. They still think it's a personal email to them. How many of you have had a personal email to you from me with your name at the top, where it's actually, I sent the same email to 6,000 to 8,000 other people?
And uppercase.
Yeah, well, sometimes, sure. Yeah, and I'm not even including the ones that say free, 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 free.
Sometimes I get two.
Yeah, you get 2 or 3 of them, that's right. See?
You've been on the list that long? Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I suppose it depends, because if I have like a Gmail of yours, then you might get a separate. All right, yeah, so number 2, always put the ask first, right? Because then, so how many of you are familiar with TLDR? How many of you know what that stands for? What does that stand for?
Too long didn't read.
Too long didn't read. So whatever it is you want from them. By the way, do you ever send an email to someone when you don't want something from them? Well, not on the business side, right? So if somebody sends me an email, what do I immediately expect? They want me, no, they're not thanking me. No, they want me to do something for them, right? They might thank me a few stages in, but they didn't start the conversation because they think I'm swell. Well, okay, once in a while. Not usually. Usually they started the conversation because they want me to do something for them. How many of you have gotten the long, rambling email where buried in the middle of paragraph 3, and each paragraph is this long, buried in the middle of paragraph 3 is what they want, and it's not in the form of a question. Yeah, so how many of you are willing to invest that much time to figure out what it is they want? Oh, 1 hand, oh, 2 hands, all right. Yeah. I actually sometimes will invest the time, but I'm real mad because that's a lot of work, right? If they ask me a question and they have like a lot of background and explanation and stuff, that's fine, because then I can decide whether I want to spend my time figuring out what it is, why, and blah, blah, blah. But if I have to spend 10 minutes to figure out what it is they want from me, I'm a pretty busy person. How many of you are pretty busy? Yeah, so do you have time to spend 10 minutes just to tease out what it is they want? So here's a good rule. If you want someone to do you a favor, so you make it easy or hard for them to do you the favor. Make it easy, right? And the first way to make it easy is make it easy for them to figure out what the heck the favor is. Okay, here's another one. How many of you have gotten that email where it's one long paragraph and it takes about 3 scrollings to get to the end of the one long paragraph? How many of you have gotten that email? Okay. So what did you learn from that?
Break it up into a dozen shorter paragraphs.
Yes!
I don't know if you can hear me, but the room is muted.
No, not that part. No, but break it up into paragraphs. Yes, that's why they taught us paragraphs, because when you've got this giant long thing, nobody has time for that, right? Plus, after a while, I don't know what the psychology of paragraphs is. There must be some psychology of paragraphs, but about the 3rd sentence into the paragraph, you start to drift, right? But if there's that break between the paragraphs, then somehow your brain and your attention span reset somewhat, and you can sort of start, and it feels like you're starting fresh, and so you put more effort into it. Here's a trick I've learned. If you have an important phrase, don't break it up with a line break. So, for example, I am not going to do the following thing, right? So then don't put not, line break, going to. Because what will they see? Going to. They skimmed over the word not, right? So you take that not and you put it at the beginning of the next line, right? And if you have to do your own pagination, then you do that because wow, can that screw up the message you're trying to convey to someone? People skim, they don't read. How do I know that people skim and don't read?
Because we skim it.
Yeah, because I skim and don't read, but there's another way I know this. How do I know this?
Because still behind their story.
By their responses, yes. Okay, so how many of you got the email from me that said, please upload the form, the talent release form. Please upload the talent release form. Right? Yes. And how many proud emailers of the talent release form do you imagine I got?
Very few.
No, quite a good number, actually. Not a huge number. As a percentage, it's less than 10%, so that was good. But a substantial number of people were very happy to email me the form. Now, because it was less than 10%, it was fine, it was not a big deal. But if all of you had read every word except not, then I would have had 300 of those to deal with. And again, I don't have that kind of time. So you should assume people will skim. And if you have, you got to word things very carefully. You cannot eliminate them doing the opposite of what you want, but you can lower the probability, the fraction of them do the opposite of what you want. My favorite story about this, the first semester I taught the course that I teach here at OU, and I gave them a syllabus the first day. And the syllabus said, email me if you have a question, right? Don't call me on the phone, email me, right? And so I got this angry email from one of the students saying it was not appropriate for me to refuse to let them email me. Yes, okay, so that was my reaction. And the student was really rude about it too, like angry and rude, right? And so I wrote them back and I gave them the rule about if you want someone to do something nice for you, make it easy. So, you know, getting me all riled up about their tone of voice was probably not the best way to get me to do whatever it was they wanted. And by the way, please do read what it says in the syllabus, which they don't. Right? I actually got permission from an associate dean to give them a quiz on the contents of the syllabus, because then at least they could not later claim that they had no way of knowing what the rules were. Right?
I thought everybody gave it.
You know, I don't think they do. It would be a good idea. Okay, what else? What are the other good rules that I use? So this is a cultural thing. So some people will send that email where like the first paragraph is, hi, how are you? How are the kids? How have things been lately? Right? How many of you are that sort of person where you start with the socializing and then you get to the business? Nobody here is willing to admit it. Now I'm okay, so you're one of them. All right.
Doesn't it depend on how well you know the person you're emailing?
So I'll be honest and say I'm very business-like in my business emails. First name, ask, right? If we're going to get to the social part, that'll be in my response to their response. It's not going to be in the initial email. But I know a number of people who like to send, they like to start with the how are things, how's your life, how's your family, and then get to the business. And the difficulty I have with that in my own responses is then I feel obligated to respond both to the business thing and the personal things. And that can take a lot of labor. Plus, the conversation gets complicated because we're running two conversations at the same time in the same email thread. So again, I think this is a cultural difference. Different people do handle this differently. My experience has been a significant fraction of people don't have any time, and therefore I need to express to them that thing in as compact a form as possible.
But I guess when they start with that, ask about family, it's a throwback to when they used to write letters.
Right.
We used to get the
Yes, and a lot of people have been trained or raised that you don't dive immediately into business if that's rude.
Yes.
Essentially. And I was not trained that way because I grew up in a northeastern Rust Belt area. And right.
It's different.
Right. So it's a cultural difference. But for me, I have found, even though now I live in the Mid-South, I have found that most people in a business context respond better if I put the ask right up front. Also, I have the problem that I have business relationships with so many people that I couldn't possibly keep the personal details straight, like their age, whether they have a family. I can't keep that stuff in my head. And I don't have time to write it down if I find it out either. So how many of you actually know stuff about the people you have business relationships with? Like you can actually ask the question, like, how's your family? And like you remember that they have kids or don't or whatever. Like the other part is I always worry that like I'll say, how's your wife? And then it'll turn out they just got divorced or something. That's so awkward.
Yeah, and probably mixed details between different people, so I become quite hard to remember, because if I do remember.
Right, then you're overconfident. Yes, yeah. Josh, you're gonna say something.
I'll remember their life story.
Yeah, see, that's a problem too, right? You can't, right? You can remember there was that story, but you can't map it to the right person. Yeah, that is difficult.
I think I'd always remember the name.
Yeah, so different people take different approaches on that, but for me, I'm all business in my business emails. Lately, I really started turning on the exclamation points. I never used to do exclamation points. Everything ended with a period or a question mark. But now I've started doing exclamation points. So you're shaking your head. You do or you don't do exclamation points. You don't do, how many of you do exclamation points? So I find
one person I have to go with. Otherwise, you are unable to read correspondences.
So if that, for that person, if you don't have exclamation points, then they won't respond. That's fascinating. Yes.
If I'm sending an email to someone who's using, then I hold and then exclamation point. People don't take your account.
Oh, nice.
That's the sort of thing where I go to all caps and all exclamation points.
Yeah, so I learned my lesson on that because occasionally you'll hit them with that, and then it turns out that there's a good explanation, and then you feel really ashamed and so on. So I hold back a bit. I won't really start beating them over the head until we've gone a couple rounds.
It's not like an emergency alert exclamation mark. It's like, great job, exclamation mark. Also problem.
I've started doing it. You're right. Yeah, I've started putting the exclamation just if I'm thanking them or whatever. And it's not feigned. I am actually a high energy, enthusiastic person, but it's very difficult to discipline myself to not use periods. But the problem is that tone of voice is so hard to convey in writing that I have to go too far in order to not be too far back. Because there's really no middle ground, right? We don't have, I do use the ... when I'm saying something funny instead of the emoji. I will do that, because that's sort of the dry humor, but yes.
You said emoji right now, so do you?
I don't use emojis at all,
So
not even with my wife.
if someone sends you an email saying, can you do this for me? And you're like, sure, I'll do it. And then they put an emoji at the end, you're like, maybe not now.
Yeah, so I don't hold it against them. But if they ask me a serious business question and then they put a smiley face, then I'm not sure whether they mean it.
Yeah.
Double smiley?
Yeah, it's hard. So
There's
no,
an emoji,
I
don't take that.
I use emojis very, very, very sparingly, and I only do them in ASCII. I don't use like little images or anything.
Or in an informal, anonymous conversation.
Yeah, I mean, in personal conversations, it's different, obviously, but in a business conversation, I don't typically put, and that's, I mean, there are people who do, and they do it very effectively. They get what they're trying to get from people, but I'm not one of them. I can't figure out how to make it work. But the exclamation points I started doing more, and I think it's actually helping. I don't know, so you guys have gotten emails from me, right? Like, many thanks, exclamation point, right? Does it help? Does it seem like I mean it more? Okay, so you say yes and you say no. It's great that you're sitting right next to each other.
No, I don't think
You don't pay attention to that at all, so it's a total waste of effort on my part, which is great because it takes a lot out of me emotionally to have to use an exclamation point, because that's not the natural way I would express myself in writing, but so I'm glad I've invested in it. That's great.
I guess.
So now, see, the problem is I'm going to forget who it was who said that, and so I'm going to keep giving you the exclamation points and paying the emotional price for it, and it'll have no benefit whatsoever. And so that'll have been a waste. But
well, when you send out your mass, personal name emails, you're gonna have to pick one or the other.
no, I don't think I do. Oh, like whether to have it or not? Yeah, I'm gonna have it. Yeah.
I'm gonna have fun with
It seems to work better. Now, the other thing I learned, and I started learning this last year, so this was, well, several years ago I learned if they have to come back every day, then you have to email them every morning to remind them to come back, right? Now, not you guys, because you guys, like, you don't get food unless you show up. Don't have to worry about pestering you guys to show up, but the folks on video, so out in video TV land, each one of you has gotten an email from me each morning. And that's totally on purpose because my experience has been, if I leave it to people's memories, then I'm kidding myself. But if I pester people mercilessly, then I will get what I want. And the way that I know this works is we got huge numbers. Now, the second thing, and I learned this last year, but too late. Last year I tried it on Friday morning. This year I did it on Thursday morning. So last year we were so close. We had 196 the previous year. We were like at 193. And I sent out this begging email and said, can you please get on today so that we just need a few more and we'll have a record, we'll break the record. We want to go over 200 this year. You just get on, it really helped me out. And we hit 216, so that's great, right? I thought, wow, that's terrific. I should use that earlier in the week. I don't want to use it too early in the week because then I've spent that shit, right? I've got to use it late enough in the week that I don't feel bad, that I don't have another way to get people to get on. So I did it Thursday morning this year instead of Friday morning, and it worked beautifully. So I'm very proud of myself and patting myself on the back. That's
So next year you're going to start on Wednesday, but then you'll have a follow-up on Friday?
You know, I think you can only do it once. I mean, per workshop.
NCR
I
doesn't,
don't,
they do it all the time.
I don't think you can do it multiple times in the same week. That is, I think the second time it has no effect. So today when I sent the email out, it was just the regular email I'd been sending in the early part of the week. Yesterday was the special way. So it worked really well, because the other thing that I learned is if you make it sound like they're doing you a favor, they're more likely to do it. Like, I need you to do this for me. Well, you have to put it in the form of a question. Will you do this for me? Can you help us beat the record this year? Right? This is what we, and I read recently, they've apparently done some psychological studies. I wish Fanny and her daughter's name is escaping now. I wish they were here because there's such a great psychology thing where you ask someone to do you a favor and then they appreciate you more. And the reason they appreciate you more is really twisted, because what happens inside your brain when you do a favor for someone is you then have to justify to yourself that you're doing the favor for them because they're so great. So then you have a higher opinion of them than you would have if you hadn't done them the favor. Which is the exact kind of weirdness that I really enjoy. So I've started putting that to work to see if I can get better responses from people by asking them to do something nice for me. So I'm going to see next year whether this works out at all. This is going to be a fun experiment. But so far, this seems to work pretty well, because I think we're at 240 or maybe even a little more as of today. So I think we're doing really well. So, right, those are the big ones probably for email. Wow, that was a lot of distance to cover for email there. What other exciting things have you all been experiencing? What were the other topics that people wanted to talk about? Why is there, oh, because I didn't plug in the, no wonder you can't see a picture. See, I see me beautifully out here. Yes, I'm the only one. Let me plug in the HDMI cable here. You can see the same person who you see in real life, you get to see them on the screen, because who doesn't want that? All right. So, there you go. Oh, look, see, now I get all right, that's all you're going to get. Anyway, so what were the things that we were supposed to talk about? Wow, all right, so I see that everybody carefully memorized all of the topics that people wanted to discuss. So does anyone have any good stories to tell? Okay, so here's my favorite one. And you know I always have one. I already told my story about when I screwed up real bad for someone and what I had to do to fix it. And I'm going to throw this open to the audience. This includes the audience out in TV land. So horrible mistakes that you made with the researchers you're supposed to serve. Everybody's got to tell a story about something horrible that they screwed up real bad. Dylan, you seem like you must have a story about that.
Yeah. So I am.
Here, I'll give you the mic. And you have to scream right into the microphone.
All right. All right, well, obviously I'm a user-facing person and I shouldn't be allowed root access, but they gave it to me anyway. Anyway, I was trying to replicate something another admin had done for somebody, but that admin had left and didn't write what they did. So I was trying, and I had to reassign permissions for this person. But for some reason, when I went to do that, it was taking a very long time, and I was very confused why. And I rewrote all the permissions on the whole cluster to that one person. Nobody else.
Oh! Oh, no, don't do that.
Yeah. So I messed up badly. I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah. So if you're going to use star, don't use -R. Good. All right, David, you must have a story of a bad screw up. Oh, he's thinking hard. All right, I'll come back to you. You keep thinking. You have a good story of everybody's thinking hard. Carlisle, do you have a story of a bad screw up?
Yeah.
All right. Check the screen right
So-
into the microphone.
So I didn't start doing HPC until a few years after I'd been doing other administration. So my screw-ups were done before I got to HPC.
Okay.
But I recall being a new admin, my boss was out. Something was going wrong with the system, and they were coming to me to try and fix it. And I'm like, well, this process has a whole lot of time on it. I'll just kill that and see if that will.
So you didn't question why it had a whole lot of time.
Yes, and then suddenly no one was getting any email.
Ooh.
Right. So it wasn't a bad screw up. My boss came back soon. Okay.
Well, an email kind of piled up in the meantime. as
Email
opposed to
piled up,
disappearing.
yes.
Okay, that's good.
But I learned that sometimes it's best to do nothing.
Yes, that is for sure true. All right, JP, do you have a story of something you screwed up real bad?
Not really.
Oh, come on.
I always been a one-man show, so I'm always careful, and that's what they call me. So at one time I did instead of reloading the firewall, I deleted it.
The whole firewall.
Firewall. And nobody could log in. So somebody, because that part was controlling the whole cluster, and we had many services running from different nodes. You didn't have much stuff, resources. Hopefully, someone had a copy, and he copied it back, and I feel like I was born again. I thought I lost my job.
No. And you got very lucky. All right, Jerry, do you have a I screwed up story?
I wasn't the system administrator. I didn't want to play one on TV. But the sysadmin had wandered off and wasn't answering knocks to his locked door. Someone came into me and said they had a problem where their disk was filling up rapidly. Did I know what to do? I was already grumpy. I was working on something with a deadline, and I told them about the del tree command in Windows. And they said, how do I execute it? It sounded just to them like the perfect solution. And I said, del tree minus y. And I went back to my monitor and effectively tuned them out. And about 3 minutes later, I heard a scream from down the hall. They'd really done it. And they didn't have a backup.
Yeah, so good rule of thumb, do not hand a running chainsaw to a 5-year-old. So I explained carefully to my students fairly early in the semester in programming non-majors. I'm going to tell you things that you should do that will not make any sense until after you've done them. So just do them. And after you've done them, you can ask questions. Don't ask the question until you've done it. Because the only way they'll see is to try it. However, the flip side of that is there's all kinds of damage they can do. And you got to take that risk at some point. So one of the things I have them do is the safety stuff. And I tell them, teaching programming is like teaching welding, right? What's the first thing when you teach welding? The very first thing you teach the very first day is the safety rules. And when you haven't welded yet, the safety rules don't make a lick of sense. But you got to do it anyway, because otherwise you're going to burn down the building, right? Same principle. Slightly less risk, but same principle. You got any good I screwed up stories?
I got a little goofy one.
Okay.
It's just a little goofy. Oops, miscommunication with telling the user how to do something. So we had a user, an undergrad, who was trying to install the pandas package for Python, and they sent a ticket. I got a access denied error trying to install pandas, and I'm like, what are you trying to use? Apt get installed pandas, and I'm like, not quite right. So I said, okay, use pip install, use the user flag on there, and then pandas, and you'll be all set. They tried apt-get and their username and pandas, and I'm like, no. So it ended up being just copy paste what I have right here. Yeah.
That thing I told you to do.
Do it exactly the way.
That thing, yes. Yeah, that seems to come up a lot. No, don't improvise. I told you a thing that I already know works. Do exactly that thing. All right, Priscilla, you get an extra moment because Jerry's got another one. We're going to go back to Jerry, and that's your turn.
This will be quick. There's a particular piece of software in the meteorology world called LDM. And one of the core instructions for LDM installation is to hang your brain at the door outside the room. We don't want you thinking. Follow the instructions exactly. If you tell us that you tried to do it better, we will tell you to delete your installation and come back to us when you stop thinking.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
That goes to an important rule on emails. When sending commands, make sure they're in a separate block, or write a wiki page and send them to that.
So we use a ticketing system that uses the hash at the beginning of the line to mean a command for the ticketing system, not text in the email that the ticketing system consists of. So we repeatedly have had to, when we do #s batch, because we're explaining how to do it in their back script, we then have to go back and redo the email to actually show the pound sign, the hash. Yeah, it's brutal. Okay, you got one.
Can I give stories that?
Any stories are good.
So this was not me as a research facilitator, but rather when I was on the other side of the fence as a researcher. And for my research, I used this commercial software which had only 5 licenses on the cluster. And whenever I ran the software job, we had a wall time, so everyone had access to the software. And I figured out that if I could run a small instance of the job on the login node, and then forever block those 5 licenses for me. And I not thought that I was going to get a really angry email from the sysadmin saying that they would just kick me out of the cluster for a long, long time if I didn't stop doing it.
So that reminds me then. So when I was a grad student, so as a user, and I don't remember what the specific task I was trying to do, but it involved a lot of tasks on a lot of files. There were like thousands of these files that I had to do the same list of tasks on. And so I wrote a little shell script that did those tasks. You know, I had the list of files and did the tasks on each file, and that was fine, except that I wrote into the shell script to do for each file to do in background. So I had thousands of background processors. Now it turned out that the sysadmin was down the hall from my office. So she walked into my office and said, please don't ever do that again. Which was actually a lot nicer than I deserved. Okay, you got one? You've never done anything bad. Oh, oh, you got another one? Okay, all right.
But she's young.
Sad, sure. Make us all feel bad.
So we had a PhD researcher 3 years into his research, and he stored all his information on his crash directory and went on vacation for a month. And he comes back and asks us to recover his data, which was.
Oh, yeah. So I have a similar one. This was before we started our supercomputing center, but it was a person in the research group that I worked for who had a year and a half worth of data on a Scratch directory, and it crashed because Scratch systems go down. And when it came back, his year and a half worth of data was gone. And of course, not recoverable because there's no second copy of the Scratch directory. You don't have any? And do you have any?
You've forgotten that he's
Never
not
worked on research. Do you have any screwed up something on a computer that affected other people?
Somebody should move that, right?
Okay, let's hear.
And we fixed it.
Oh man, that's so fun. I wanted something more tragic.
So Henry,
Albert, you got me?
Girl is on the cheating side.
All right, here.
Henry is, this is my personal experience. Teaching electronic lab, scanning this, but Prep was at the end of 500 million. The experiment they are doing is doing some testing of SEO. SEO came up to 20 to 40 N. Then, it was many years ago, SEO cost about $15 to $20 fees. It was expensive. And once you did it, it was always charging per SEO. It's amazing because the drug war only handled 500 million. And it can burn something in 20 areas. To be fair. Here's a new drug war, SEO. Just show me how you burn to be free, you don't have to pay. And he's totally surprised. You know what happened. I don't know what happened either. So I asked him, this is something we follow. You have everything set up. You don't follow instructions, I will ask you to provide instruction for everything done here. And that's applied to when they don't feel clustered. What it is, you're supposed to learn to build a cluster is the software that is like that. The number is only arbitrary. But if you mess up the first time, you find out what you messed up and follow that. That's my experience.
Yeah. Okay.
So did this ever happen to anyone? You work in a group 5, 10 people?
Wait, hang on. People can't hear you in TV land. Okay, shout it out.
Well, say you work with the people in 5, 10 people in the group. Somebody screwed up, you're going to talk about him. So you send an email to 5 or 6 people thinking about the real victim didn't get it. But he went to the group email and he got what you said.
That's how our director got fired. Is that a story?
Sure. I have a different one about that too. Okay, so we have a storage server. Just all it is storage. The vendor came by to do an update, and they forced the update, and we saw a bunch of red lights. Is an HCM system? So I'm sorry, I'm saying all that wrong. It was a hierarchical storage system, so everything was on the object storage, trying to get backed up, and the stubs got lost. Ended up losing about 1% of all the data on the storage server. And the biggest issue was that the interim director at the time told us not to tell anybody about it until we knew what was wrong.
No, admit it early.
Yeah, months went by and researchers were trying to figure out where their data went.
Yeah. No. Give them the bad news soon, because if you don't tell them, they'll figure it out. And it's much worse if they have to figure it out on their own. Anybody out in TV land want to tell a story about how they terribly messed something up?
I got one.
David, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll tell two back to back. One is my mess up. One is a grad student's mess up.
Can you be louder? I'm not hearing you.
All right, I have two back to back. One is my personal mess up. One is a friend's mess up when they had root on their lab's machine. So mine was, this is 1992, my first sysadmin job. There was no World Wide Web, right? So I was sysadmin, setting up cluster, well, not really a cluster, but a room full of computers to teach physics. Managed to do something in the root directory that crashed my machine. And thankfully, there was a Usenet, and people helped me to boot from a 1/4-inch tape, which, if you've never done this, is quite slow. Worked anyway. The next one was a friend of mine was a grad student lab. He was on the PDP-11, which was their data acquisition machine. It was on his root. He saw terminal sessions, PTY sessions being owned by root, and said, PTY files rather, device files, and said that shouldn't belong to root because I'm logged in onto the terminal. I should own it. So proceeded to SU to root and delete the device files and kill the machine. They came running to me because I was known as the Unix head, and they couldn't find any of their original OS media, so I couldn't help them. I have no idea what happened after that.
Anyone else out in TV land want to tell a story where you screwed up? Wow, so few volunteers. All right, then we'll move on to my next favorite kind of story, which is the weirdest thing that ever happened with a user. Something bizarre that happened with a user.
Somebody once asked me how to log out of Windows.
Wait.
I got a formal ticket for how do I log out of Windows?
I'm not sure that counts as weird. That sort of happens all the time. So most of my experiences that are weird happen from teaching more than facilitation. So how many of you have taught either formally or informally, like did a workshop or whatever it was? Okay, so if you notice this, they take whatever you say, they twist it into literally the exact opposite, and then they can prove logically that that's what you must have meant. How many of you have had that experience? Yeah, I tell my TAs this. Every semester I get some new TAs, and I tell them about this. I say, you have to expect this, and they look at me like I'm from Mars. And then at the end of the semester, I ask them, so did that happen? Oh yeah, totally. And they really don't believe. How many have you had that happen? How many of you have had that happen? It's the exact opposite of what you meant. Really? Only you and me? Okay, there. All right, a few of you. Yeah, yeah. Have you had that with a user? You tell them do X, and they do not X? Yes. Okay. Anybody have some stories about that? You told the user to do X, and they did not X, and they believed that they had done the right thing?
You mean within the last week?
Sure.
You mean today?
If that's what you got, I'm open to it. Go ahead.
Oh, this is related to any sysadmin to this advice for everybody. I'm sure you already know. So I was working for one of the previous institution, and so it was a research institution, and so the postdoc come in and tell me they wanted to move into a new PC. So usually I wipe out, it was a Windows work, and then move the all the data from their my documents and yeah, basically from my documents and desktop to new computer and email. So I said, you sure I can wipe it out, reinstall it? He said, yes, you can. So the computer had a virus. So we used to put it up the Linux PC and use OpenSSH and copy it to the disk. So I always made a copy for myself, even though they said they didn't make a copy. So I made my copy, whatever I saw the file. Is there research? I don't know. And so I made my copy. And then I told him, go and make your copy. And he said, yes. I asked him 3 or 4 times. After 10 days, he come in. No, he doesn't. My director came in, Dr. Bill Hawkins. JP, I got a $1 million research lined up. What you did to his PC? You deleted everything. I said, no, I told him that, to back it up. And he said, no, he doesn't have to do backup. Also, he had PORN things in the computer. That's why I had this. And he told me not to tell anybody. So, okay, I just wiped it out. I said it was just a virus. And then, see, I gave the favor, right? Back to the director, say it was my fault. And then, director told me, whatever it takes, we need to get. And he was a co-writer director on this, the grant. So I called the Lenovo, and I told him I'll pay for the shipping and everything. And he said, you're extremely lucky. In half an hour, the guy coming in, take the disk, and they smash it. And he had it, and then he shipped it. So don't believe the things.
You got one?
Weird, funny story. It's about one line. It's pretty short. So we have a logging system that shows us when users are trying to do something they aren't supposed to do. For example, apt-get install, sudo apt-get install or something. Anyway, so usually we read through it to see if the user is really having some problems and if we can reach out to them and ask them to solve it. So I got a couple of emails from this one user that was just sudo make me a sandwich.
Okay, Josh, you said you had one?
Nope. Everyone at my previous and current institutions are amazing.
He says if he packs up. Anybody else got a story they want to share? Something weird with a user?
All of my new users get a sample config script for our most common applications. And we, of course, have the older users who've been around for a while who have their own expert versions of the script. Unfortunately, most of them have come to me at one time or another and said, what do I do? And they simply add my script to the bottom of theirs. But they keep a copy of theirs around because they tell, I have one and two in particular now, who tell their new postdocs or graduate students, oh, here's the script you really want to follow. Jerry will tell you another one, but it doesn't do everything you want. So, typically about 6, 8, 10 weeks into their tenure, they come to me and they go, nothing works on here anymore. I don't know what you've done to the system. Did you use my script? Well, of course I use your script.
Let's see.
Well, it's actually called at the top of their TCS HRC. But the rest of the TCS HRC is from their boss. So everything that I had them do has been overwritten, and they are horribly confused.
Yep. Common issue.
And that one happened last Thursday.
Yeah.
Most recently,
Yeah.
last Thursday.
Of course. Yeah, those are the kinds of things.
But so-and-so told me I had to use it.
So we don't usually see I have to do that. We see, so we will ask them, why are you doing X, Y, Z? And they'll say, I don't know, that's in the script I inherited.
Yes.
And so one of the most important questions we can ask them is, can you send us your back script?
Yeah.
Because without that script, we have no idea what's really happening.
Actually, I don't ask them for that anymore. I just go stupid.
Go to the video.
So I don't always have the confidence that I'll find the right thing if I approach it that way. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't.
I've been known to log in as them and see what actually comes up and then try and backtrack. Where did they load this from?
Yeah.
How did they get here? And I have one user where I have no idea where his environment is coming from, because there is not a single thing in his home directory that I can identify that loads some of those environment variables, and it certainly isn't in the Etsy CSHRC.
Right. Well, okay, so then there's the file deletion issue. How many of you are terrified of deleting somebody else's files? Yes. Anybody have a story around that?
I get it in writing when they say, yes, you can. I mean,
I do too,
dead tree.
but just because they said yes doesn't mean they'll agree that they said yes.
I get it in dead tree. Not just email, not verbal. I want dead tree.
Yeah.
Even my piece of paper, I always made a copy. It doesn't matter if it's 10 years.
See, the difficulty is if you make a copy, then you'll have to worry about them getting mad that you made a copy of their stuff. Whereas if you don't make a copy, then you'll have to worry about them getting mad that you lost all their stuff or destroyed their entire career. So I like the middle ground of it's all done by an automated script and it's going to run whether they like it or not. And it has nothing to do with me personally. It's just going to run. And then we don't have to worry about whose fault it is.
And I have started that process. And I send them out a note every 2 weeks. The script, and the script actually runs every hour.
The one that traverses the file tree looking for what can be deleted?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know how long it takes for ours to run, but I think we're running on more or less a continual cycle.
Yeah. If that script is not running, I just got lucky in how fast it ran.
Yeah, I think for us, it's when it comes to the end, it just starts over.
And how do the users?
I've got only one problem child who did not fully believe when I said this was going to happen.
Right.
And he came to me about 3 weeks in a row. He didn't seem to notice it in between, but about 3 weeks in a row going, my files disappeared. What did you do? The automatic file deletion that comes out every week told you about it. I didn't see that. It goes to the same mailing list every week. You're on the list. Here's the list. Here's you right here. Here's the copy I got. Here's you right here in the address. Well, I didn't read it. Oh, that's another problem.
Yes, that's different. Right. Well, so we send a weekly reminder, and the weekly reminder says how many files and how much capacity will be deleted on each of the following upcoming days, and then how much we've pseudo-deleted, which really means we moved to a hidden secret directory, and how long they have to ask to have it restored before we physically delete it in Scott. And I like the phrase in all caps, lost forever and never recoverable. That gets their attention.
I can't keep that separate space where I can temporarily retain files because I have 2 users who are perfectly capable of filling a petabyte today.
Well, the advantage is if you're just moving them into a hidden secret directory, then you aren't actually consuming any additional space. So you have to set your deletion duration to match the usage.
But I have to put it someplace where they can't, where I can get to it and they can't.
Right. It has to be a different place on the same device so that there's no cost to moving it. Yeah.
And then I'll still stay at 90% on the petabyte.
Yeah, we try to stay in the 70 to 80% range. And sometimes we are, and sometimes we're not. But we try. Good. More stories?
I had a funny story. I was training one of the students how to submit a job. So he was SSHing to classroom. He brought his laptop. He said, "Oh no, this laptop is from XYZ. Oh, you're gonna burn my laptop. You're gonna burn my. I don't have that many CPUs in here. I can run this. You're burning it here. To stop." And he put the button like, "No, it's in the classroom."
Yeah.
So using laptop, I was using SSH
because they don't have a mental picture of what that means because they've never done remote computing before. Well, of course, they've always done remote computing. They've just never realized it.
And then another funny one.
Do what?
Another funny one. We use AD credential, so it's the same net ID and password as your email logging into the classroom. So usually I send an email, okay, your credential is the same as your net ID, that means our university's ID. So they type the login net ID, password net ID, and then they come back. It's not working, And I said, did you use your net ID? He says, yes. So after 3-4 emails, then I figured out the exact net ID.
Yes, so happily here at OU, we have a good term for that. It's called the OU 4+4. So if you say your OU 4+4 username, they know what username you're referring to.
So I usually say then it's same as your email password. Then they know.
Right. Yeah, you have to put it in terms that they're familiar with. Good. Well, we're just about at the end of our time. So now I'm going to spend a little moment being sort of sentimental and maudlin. I was thinking about this morning, just how much I enjoy doing these workshops and having people show up and having be out on video conferencing and working together on this stuff. We've had a really good week, and I've been very, very happy. We had a little bit of a scramble with the research data management session Did I tell you guys about that? Oh, okay, apparently I didn't. So Wednesday afternoon, we found out that the one of the panelists and the moderator had to drop because of medical situations, so they couldn't get out of it. And so we had to scramble, and so Janine and I worked together on Thursday to recruit additional panelists so that we actually had enough people to run a panel, and we had essentially about 4 hours to get all of that fixed behind the scenes while everything else was actually happening. So, and it all worked beautifully. We got one person who was attending the workshop anyway, and I noticed she had sent me a note about something else. And I noticed she had research data librarian in her signature. I was like, oh, and by the way, would you be willing to do the following thing first thing in the morning tomorrow? And astonishingly, she was like, oh yeah, that sounds like fun. And then Pete, you saw Pete was on both Thursday and Friday. That's because Thursday morning, before he even did his first thing, I begged him to do Friday. And he was like, yeah, sure, I guess. He had the time available. He's very good about it. And then Jameen was able to recruit someone as well. So we ended up with actually a bigger panel than we originally had. But it was a pure crisis in the background, so we missed all that. It was a little nerve-wracking, but it all turned out well. I've gotten kind of to the point now. How many of you have seen Shakespeare in Love, the movie? Okay, I'm literally the only person here who's seen this movie. So
I'm typing.
Huh?
No, I'm down typing.
You're typing. You've seen. All right. So there's this character who, you know, everything is going wrong, and he says, it's okay, it'll all work out. And they ask him, how do you know it'll work out? And he says, I don't know, it's a mystery. So I don't know how it all worked out. It's a mystery, but it all worked out. So I felt very good about that. But the more we do these kinds of things, the more I love this community and working with this community and being part of this community. So I just want to let you know that even if it wasn't great to claim credit on stuff like this and to have you all come here and all that stuff, I still love just the community aspect of this and building that together. So I want to let you know this is one of the most fun, enjoyable, and important things that I get to do every year. And that's why I'm so happy that we have at least 2 more years of funding. So I'll get to do this at least 2 more times and hopefully be able to continue it beyond that. I'm very grateful to all of you for spending the time together. And I know many of you were astonished when you suddenly got this email out of the blue, free, 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 free. Some of you not even from me, someone passed it along to you. But I'm so glad that you chose to read the email and to sign up to be part of this. Thank you very, very much. I want to give a big hand to Debbie for doing all the coordination, putting this together. Without her, none of this would have happened. And I want to thank all of our speakers, all of our panelists and moderators, and everybody behind the scenes who made all this happen. I want to thank the catering folks, without whom you all would have wandered off first thing Sunday evening and never come back. Apparently we just lost our contact at the hotel, so now we have to train a whole new person on how to work well with us. But I know Debbie is going to get that well in hand. You're very good at getting people to want to help us. So thank you all very much for a wonderful week. Have a safe trip back, those of you who have a trip back to take. And we'll do it again next year. And those of you who are going to be at the PERC conference, we'll see you there. Bye-bye all. Have a good night.